WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Where to begin in this one? First things first, a 50th birthday to my wife. Big week around here, big doings, big couple of weeks ahead here at Baltimore Positive, including our Maryland Crab Cake Tour. I got my Betty Boop scratch-off ticket somewhere handy here. Few left. We're going to move into the next category very, very soon. We're going to be at Luna del C on Wednesday with my pal Tony Asadi. And then beyond, I'll have some more announcements into June, into July about the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. It's also brought to you by our friends at Goodwill and our newest sponsor, Window Nation. I dig the peace sign here. I've been enjoying this shirt, and it's really, really soft. Luke has been not AWOL. I've allowed him to speak more to Dennis about this Lamar Jackson situation. Chris Pica, who I know you have a lot of respect for his internal opinions, having worked for the Saints and the Falcons and having navigated the PR and the communication side of all of this. I've had some interesting texts back and forth with folks in the Purple Building as well. And then there's just the general Twitterdom of fandom that I guess I dove in on Friday and took a good sniff. It is kind of amazing what people think that these football players should be doing in the offseason when they're football players. So, Luke, I'll let you take the floor on this because it has been a week, and Lamar could appear at any point, right? I mean, and he will be here at some point soon. But this is, I don't want to say it's treacherous, but it's not good. Not good for him, not good for the team. If he doesn't know that it's not good for him, then shame on him that he doesn't know what he doesn't know. But I'm old. I got silver in. I let the beard grow in a little bit today to show my wisdom because this, if you're going to be married for life, this don't go on a bad date. This is silly.
Yeah. First off, happy birthday to Jen. It's awesome. I'm glad you guys have had a chance to celebrate.
She looks a little like Betty Boop, my wife.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But I think first and foremost, always strong opinions about this. I mean, every year. And let's face it, this is nothing new. I can remember years ago talking about Ray Lewis not being at OTAs or Ed Reed not being at OTAs, Terrell Suggs.
There are football, though.
Well, and I was just going to say, you said football players, and that's where I would actually stop you and say, for most football players, I agree that going to OTAs is not the end-all, be-all, big deal. In the case of veteran players like a Calais Campbell, for example, Michael Pierce, Marcus Williams, a couple guys the Ravens just signed, they weren't there for the first week of OTAs. So this does, it isn't something that is so unique. However,
they're not trying to get a $300 million contract.
There are football players and there are quarterbacks. And I would even say you just said it, and that's where I kind of look at this thing. And it's very easy to look at it from the perspective of looking at Lamar and saying, okay, he's a quarterback. I look around the league. Basically, the only quarterbacks right now who haven't been at OTAs for the start of them are Tom Brady, who just retired, and he's Tom Brady, right? He's going to be 45 years old. He attended OTAs for years, basically until his wife said, you need to be home in the spring. You have kids that are getting older, and if you're going to keep playing football and you want to keep having a marriage and a happy family, you need to be here. So that was kind of the shift for him in New England over the last 2-3 years he was there. So you have him. You have Aaron Rodgers, who, yes, he did get a new contract, but we know what kind of turmoil and dissension has been there between him and the Packers over the last few years. And the other one is Kyler Murray, who has taken a much different approach with his quest to get a new contract than Lamar Jackson has. We've seen him unfollow the Cardinals on social media. We've seen his agent put out a long statement. You've seen a much different approach. And that's where I would respect Lamar from the standpoint of, you haven't seen him unfollow the team. And we've seen him, I guess, I don't know if spout off's the right term, but express some dissatisfaction with Marquise Brown being traded on draft night, even though it's become apparent, and Marquise Brown even said Lamar knew this was coming. But beyond that, it's been a very quiet contract situation here, to the point where I think this is where we run into where the Ravens have gotten themselves in trouble a little bit, that I think this is my read on it. They've heard so little from him, and he hasn't engaged in any contract talks since last year. Eric DeCosta said as much. But when you have Steve Bisciotti or other people in the organization saying, I think this guy is so obsessed with winning a Super Bowl that deep down he doesn't think he's worthy of a contract yet, yada, 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 That's where I think the Ravens have run into some trouble here, because I think they're providing some cover and they're trying to make this situation be as amicable as possible. And I'm not saying that there's this major animosity, but at the same time, you have your owner roughly a little over a month ago saying that, and then your quarterback's not showing up at OTAs. And quarterback is the exception here. It's the position that is the most valuable, makes the most money. I mean, Lamar Jackson, from a market value standpoint, is very much underpaid for the 2022 season. We'd all agree with that, right? He's going to make $23 million. That's well below market for a quarterback of his caliber, yet he still has the highest cap figure and still has the highest 2022 base salary on the Ravens. So what does that tell you? It tells you how important the position is. So with that said, you look at that, you look at what the expectation is around the league as far as quarterbacks being at OTAs. You look at his closest contemporaries, whether you're talking about Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Justin Herbert. Go down the list of all the quarterbacks that are right around 25 years old, guys who've been to Pro Bowls. In the case of Mahomes, a guy who's won an MVP. And even Mahomes, a guy who's won a Super Bowl. So you look at them, you see that they have been at OTAs. And in Lamar's case, if you had told me a year ago, Nestor, that there hadn't been any movement from a contractual standpoint, in terms of getting an extension, one of the first things I would have predicted is there might be a decent chance he's skipping OTAs because they are voluntary. I want to make it that very clear. But when the organization has spent so much time this offseason kind of talking about, whether Lamar is motivated to get a contract right now, whether he's motivated by money, yada, yada, yada. He's all in on winning, leadership. You go down the list of things they've said, and then he doesn't show up. Yeah, it's bad optics. And, I do find it interesting that a large sector of the fan base, and I don't know how much of this there's a consistency here, but I think back to several years ago when there was so much chatter about Joe Flacco not throwing with his wide receivers in the offseason. And to Lamar's credit, we saw some video earlier this offseason, him throwing to Rashad Bateman, him throwing to James Prochet. But it's an interesting juxtaposition of thinking back to that. And then, whatever the percentage is, and, Twitter and Facebook and everything, that's still not real life in terms of you get some vocal subsets of people speaking, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's how everyone feels or the majority necessarily. But you have people that are fine with him skipping OTAs, yet they're glad that he's meeting up with a personal throwing coach and Adam Dado. And, they point to him throwing.
You're a member of a team. Let me stop that. Right. The team pays you $22 million a year. You're a member of the team. Be a member of the team. That's a Harbaugh way. That's a Bisciotti way. That's an Ozzie way. That was a Billick way. That was a Ted way, right? Like, the organization has never changed on that. This is really bizarre. And I think it's even more bizarre that you mentioned providing cover. Like, no one really even knows who's orchestrating what and why he's sharing videos of teammates throwing the football, and then he doesn't show up for OTAs. Then he's mouthing off to Chris Sims in the middle of practice, which was just I'm just going to say this. He's got some maturity issues, and I don't know what that means at 25. I'm not 25 and rich and talented and, like all of that, right? And have my statue in Louisville and like all, if you're about the team and about winning a championship and you think that this team or some other team is going to give you $231 million of guaranteed money, then the first foot forward is I'm going to show up. I'm going to be there first. I'm going to be last to leave all the time, every time. And everyone will be accountable to me. Even Tom Brady, all these years later, they still sort of answer to him. And you can't lead from behind at 25 with a bunch of young players, people you may not have even met who are going to be your teammates, and you're the last guy they meet. And, I've seen this over the course of my life where a guy comes in and is happy to be here, and then the team has changed for him and built around him to help him win because they believe he's committed to winning. And then he doesn't show up, and there's 80 guys running around last week, and he's not one of them. It's beyond an optic thing. I think the people in Owings Mills are pissed. You know what I mean? For real pissed. And I don't know how that, that can always be salved by him running around and throwing the football and they like him and whatever. But, where are we? I mean, as a fan, I'm wondering that. As a media member, I'm wondering that. And now the next time he posts up, it's not going to be buddy, bunky Lamar anymore. It's going to be, hey, Lamar, what's up? You know what I mean? We haven't stood in front of Lamar and said, hey, Lamar, what's up? I remember how pissed he got at me when I asked, do you think running the ball 21 times is sustainable? He lost his mind. John burred up at me, and then he hadn't played since. That's the other part of this. This is a team. This is a franchise on a 6-game losing streak that hasn't had a healthy quarterback, a real quarterback. No offense to Tyler Huntley, but a guy they can win with since Halloween. It's never too early to show up, even if you don't want to run around out there because, like, Dorn, you don't want to injure this valuable property or whatever it is. But I'm not aghast, but I am surprised, and I do think that this is bad purple smoke coming out of the castle for me. It's bad mojo all the way around that we're talking about this, because I don't want to be talking about this on June 1st.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, for me, it's not even really that much about him not being here in late May and early June. As I said years ago with Joe Flacco, with whether he's getting together with receivers in the offseason or not, I don't think that factor, talking OTAs or talking about informal get-togethers with quarterbacks thrown with the receiver, I don't think that's the end-all be-all in terms of how the 2022 season is going to go. However, it's what you just said. It poses the question, where is he in terms of being on the same page with the organization? And that's been the question all along, right? I mean, when you hear Eric DeCosta or Steve Bisciotti or John Harbaugh talking about this for months now in terms of, Lamar hasn't shown an interest in engaging in contract talks right now. So, okay, you look at each of these elements in isolation and you say, all right, you look at each one and you can kind of explain it. But when these things start piling up, that's where I look at him not being at OTAs more as a symptom of a greater concern. And that is, again, does he really want to be in Baltimore from the standpoint of, he's not engaging in contract talks. And if it is true that he's so obsessed with winning the Super Bowl, then why isn't he at OTAs then? So you keep looking at this and it just begs the question of, is he on the same page with the organization? And it's feeling more and more, and the him reacting to the Hollywood Brown trade on draft night and some of that. All of these examples, you keep asking yourself, I don't know that. And that's where it has to be concerning. And this feels like a symptom. Him not being at OTAs feels like a symptom of a potentially greater problem. And that's his long-term status, his long-term future in Baltimore. And that's not me reporting that I've heard that. I'm just looking at this like anyone else.
I just keep thinking from a negotiating standpoint, just flat out, they offered him 80, 90 million guaranteed, this, that, what the market rate would have been had Cleveland not lost their mind, right? So I think we saw the tectonic plate shift when all those teams lined up for this guy who has 22 allegations against him. It offended Matt Ryan out of Atlanta, right? I mean, it's really affected all of this. Now it's affected the money part. And without knowing, Eric DeCosta doesn't have a person to pick up the phone and negotiate with at this point, right? That's very apparent. And we don't really know who's giving Lamar that advice, although you'd like to think he has that advice. Even if it's bad advice, he has somebody giving him advice above and beyond him and his mother, right? And it is so peculiar, but I also think that and look, man, you've been around this a long time. I mean, this kid sat there, almost went into the second round in a green jacket, right? Like the Ravens swooped up, took him, brought him in. Peculiar in that they have to change their whole team. Peculiar in that he doesn't have an agent. Incredible that he came in the first year and took over Joe Flacco's thing and ran the magnetic pinball thing into the playoffs and then wins an MVP in this unprecedented way and run. He's 22 years old. It's been you demand. Let's give you a statue. You're 25, you demand. And he probably looks in his bank account and says, I've collected 12 million bucks. I got 6 million, whatever he has. He probably doesn't have much. He probably spent some money, but I know he hasn't made a lot, and he's not getting Subway endorsements like RG3. He's not getting Progressive endorsements and whatever. How many commercials is Baker Mayfield in? I mean, like seriously, Dak Prescott hadn't won Bupkis, and he's on commercial. Like all of that, where they're augmenting income by millions. I don't know what Lamar's getting for autographs and whatnot, but Lamar's not wealthy. He's just made some money. Now, this year, he's going to double what he's ever made in 1 year. And how does he cash in? Well, the only way he cashes in is to cash in with the Ravens, because he ain't getting the money from the Chiefs or the Bills who are his suitors? And I think to myself, if I'm the grown-up, and I played the grown-up on the internet on Friday and some people didn't like it, they don't want to hear from guys that, write books about the team and cover the team for 27 years. They don't want to hear from those kind of guys. The notion that he believes there's another place for him, like if this is the place for you and you want to be here, show up for work, cut your best deal, go do what Flacco did. And I would release that chapter from Purple Rain 2 to show my wisdom. Go do what Flacco did. Just say, no, I don't want your money. I'm going to go play it through. I'm going to win a Super Bowl, and I want to be here. And of course I want to be here, and I'm going to sign with you. We're going to win a championship together, but I'm not going to get paid on not winning a championship. I'm going to get paid on winning a championship. That's a very easy thing to emote if you feel so. I mean, Bisciotti was aghast, and Ozzie said, well, whatever. And Harbaugh's like, well, you've been here for 3 years already, kid. Maybe we'll win one. Maybe Billy Cundiff will make the kick and Lee Evans will catch the ball next time, right? What's Lamar doing? There's only one league. There's only a handful of teams that would think about, and the Ravens would think about trading him, how disgruntled he'd have to make himself. Like he'd have to be a real jerk. He'd have to jerk his way out of here in that way, because they like him that much. They love him that much. They don't have any other options. They've built the whole team around him. So that being said, I'm trying to write the column, my new column, Luke, on where's the leverage in this. And that's where I'm going to be talking to really smart people and agents in the coming weeks and saying, where's the leverage here? Like, because he's watching these NBA players, and I mean, he watched Kodak Black get himself out of jail. You know what I mean? Like you can go do anything you want. You can will yourself to Oklahoma City if you want, or to the Lakers if you want, or to Cleveland if you want. Even if you've got 22 allegations against you, you can get 5 teams lining up. Carolina, all these desperate teams. Where does he want to go? Where is he going to be in 2026? And what's going to be the pathway to get him there? Because the only way he gets anywhere is to come here and be the best he can be, and be the happiest Lamar in a happy building, in a happy friend. That's how you win. You don't win by being this disgruntled quarterback, right? Like, and you don't get paid maybe you do get paid being the disgruntled quarterback. We'll find out. Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson, he got paid more than anybody, more than any owner thought he was going to get paid, right? So I'm trying to figure out his leverage to say, if I hold out, they'll finally bring me 200 million, when he's not even asking for 200 million. You know what I mean? Like, what's he trying to do? What's his strategy? Does he want to be the quarterback of the Dolphins? I don't know. But if he wants to be the quarterback of the here, showing up here and knowing they're going to be the ones that give you 200, 300 million, and they're kind of sort of willing to do that because they built the whole thing around you. I don't know where the leverage point here is. I really don't. And the other part of, well, if I don't play, you'll suck. Well, they know that. And they witnessed that the last 8 weeks. They know how valuable he is. That's why they want him in camp.
Right. And I mean, I think first and foremost, I think this is where we do need to acknowledge, by him waiting, and I'm with you from the standpoint of what is the end game? What is the end point for you? Because you can theoretically keep waiting and keep kicking the can down the road. And yeah, quarterback market value is going to continue to go up with the way the salary cap is going up on the other side of, the height of the pandemic and how that impacted, the league and its revenue. And now knowing there's going to be new TV deals kicking in and whatnot. So the cap's going to continue to go up. And even if right now, if he said today, I'm hiring the best agent pick whichever one you want to, and I'm going to go get my deal. If that's the case, he's done very well for himself by waiting a year, because he's going to get more than Josh Allen. He's going to get more than Dak Prescott got from the Cowboys a year ago. He's going to get
what
more.
Joe Flacco said a decade ago.
Sure.
Joe Flacco said, everybody tells me the longer I wait, as long as I don't break my hip in half,
right,
I will get my money.
Right. So
even
from
without
that,
winning a Super Bowl.
and keep in mind, Lamar's done plenty in the regular season in terms of accolades to earn a lucrative, crazy payday. I mean, that just is what it is. You can say what you want about long-term viability or injury risk, anything. The stats speak for themselves. The Ravens have won a lot since he's become the
with lottery tickets. They are willing to make him set for
Sure.
life. You know what I mean? Whatever that 70, 80, 90, 100.
You got to get to the table at
is,
least.
Right.
Right. And he won't even come to the table. So that's, again, where you look at this, and I keep coming back to, okay, Eric DaCosta acknowledged they had I think he said a half dozen conversations he estimated from the end of the 2020 season until whatever point that stopped last off season. Money had to have come up at some point, right? I mean, they had to talk. You have that many conversations, you're at least talking in broad terms, right? You're at least spitballing a little bit, even if there's not a formal proposal made. So I keep coming back to, was the offer, and whatever that number was, there've been numbers floated out there, whatever it truly was he that insulted at that point? And I'm asking this question. I'm not saying he is.
The numbers I heard were in the 80 guaranteed, 80 on the table.
Sure. So, but
that sounds to be in line. Does that not? Until Deshaun Watson happened.
I mean, it depends. What are the full guarantees? What's the average annual value? I mean, all these different things that agents care about, players care about other things. Ultimately, what are the full guarantees? What's the structure? But even if it came in on the low side, and look, in negotiating, you're not going to make your best offer first, typically, right? I mean, I'm not a negotiator, but I understand how that works. But when you won't engage, then it puts the Ravens in a position of like, okay, we're not just going to bet against, we're not just going to negotiate against ourselves right here, right? We're not going to bid against ourselves here. So you look at that and you say, okay, you're waiting, but how long are you going to wait here? How long are you going to wait to engage? Is this a case where you've flat out said, oh, I'm going to go the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott route. I'll play under the tag for at least a year, and I'll make a boatload of money next year on a single year deal, even though it's not as much as I could make if I signed a long-term deal. And then I'll go about it that way. If you're going to go about it that way, there has to be some acknowledgement that you're potentially willing to leave the Ravens if it comes to it, because all it takes is one team, right? If you get to the point where you have the tag and then a second tag, and then you get to a point where it's so cost prohibitive from a cap standpoint that, any team would say, we can't do that. So, but I keep coming back to, what is the end game here? What is the end play here? And you mentioned, the Joe Flacco scenario, and that was the scenario that Steve Bisciotti presented in his comments earlier this offseason. If that's the case, then skipping OTAs doesn't really jive with that. And, you look at it, because every single wide receiver, a scrutinized group of wide receivers, they were all at OTAs this past week.
The question would be, dude, if we give you $250 million guaranteed, are you then not coming to OTAs? Or I mean, is this going to be an annual thing?
Right.
Is this what we've bought? Is this the player we have that's not going to be at OTAs because of the union or this or that or whatever? And if that's the case, I mean, I think to many of the people inside the building close to it, they're sort of shocked that he didn't. You know what I mean? There's a level of, wow, he's never looked not all in before. What's up? It's like the first time, your girlfriend looks at you and you're like, something that you're not looking at me the way you did before. And that's alarming. I all along. And then the mouthiness on the internet. It's one thing to say, look, I'll be there next week. I just, it's last week in May. I had some other things, and I don't know what those other things could be when you're making $22 million a year playing football. But whatever that is, but this definitely felt like a statement. And it was a statement of nothingness where John said, I'll let Lamar speak for himself, which is what, maybe that's a little terse, Harbaugh being Harbaugh, but then in the middle of the day on Friday, he's out on the internet while his teammates are sweating. That was, I just thought that wasn't smart. I don't think he's getting good advice. He's not getting good advice on social media, so I don't know that he's getting good advice on career. And again, I keep playing this out in my mind, I keep thinking, all right, dude, you don't want to be here. Now you're going to come back. You're going to bust your ass. You want to go 14-3. You want to win a Super Bowl. And then you're going to do what? Sign where? And look, this thing gets salved over very quickly. He has nowhere else to go. They have nowhere else to go. It's for us to blather about this week. But I do know it really did cause some consternation, and above and beyond the media and us talking about it, I think it's worthy of us talking about because it's very unorthodox. And once something comes off the track a little bit, trying to get it back in and trying to figure it all out. That's how Deshaun Watson wound up in Cleveland, and Kyler Murray's. This happens quickly in modern sports, especially when the pylon happens and the you demands happen, and it's us and them, right? The old Pink Floyd song there, a little nod you had there, us and them, right? And we got to be real careful on that because he's the leader of the team, and they need to be. But they also, to my point, you're not coming to OTAs once we give you $250 million. What? Huh? What? That's the part of it that I think was a little bit disturbing.
Yeah, and that's why I keep looking at that as a symptom of the bigger issue here, and it is his long-term status. It is the question about why he won't engage according to the team, and that's where we keep coming back to this. And I keep asking, what is the end game here? And you mentioned it, and I think if I'm the Ravens looking at this, probably in hindsight, what John Harbaugh said or didn't say on Wednesday, and you just said it. We have no idea for sure because Lamar hasn't said for sure why he wasn't there the first week. For all we know, he could have had a personal issue, and I'm just throwing that out there hypothetically. But how easy would it have been for John to have said that if he said, yeah, Lamar has had a personal thing. He was excused. We expect him back next week or whenever it's going to be. It's voluntary right now. We're really excited about the work he's put in the offseason. I mean, we've heard Eric, we've heard John, we've heard Steve talk about his offseason work, talking about the things he's done. And by the way, him meeting with a private coach compared to coming to OTAs, those aren't mutually like you can do both, right? I mean, it's not, this isn't something where it's one or the other. So some of those arguments I've seen from, fans or even some media types, I kind of laugh at, but I just can't, I can't help but keep coming back to this being a potential symptom of a much greater concern. Again, in the big picture, Nestor, I'm not that terribly concerned about him missing some voluntary practices in May and June because we know, and I pass on observations of my 12 Ravens thoughts at BaltimorePositive.com. I could go back and look at past years in May and June and see things that I write and say, oh, never talked about that guy again a single time this spring or summer, or, oh, that guy was really bad back in May and he ended up being a really good player. So we know it doesn't mean that much in the big picture. But again, wondering about it being a symptom of a much greater concern. And that is, for me, the team and Lamar Jackson being on the same page. And it's just feeling more and more as time goes on that they aren't. Because if they were, John wouldn't have been as short as he was talking about this this past Wednesday. So again, is it something that is catastrophic? No. And you're not going to get me to sit here and say that I think that this is some colossal problem, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's fine either, because I think it's naive at this point to keep just explaining away and apologizing away for how all of this is playing out and try to act like it's normal. People want to point to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has made it clear he's not happy with his contract. Lamar has made no such statement. And that's where I keep coming back to one of the big issues. The longer he doesn't talk, and I don't mean just a tweet towards Chris Sims, I mean answering questions and saying, hey, this is why I haven't talked about my contract, or this is why I'm waiting, or this is why I don't have an agent, like going down the list. And I'm not saying he's going to answer all those questions whenever he does arrive in Owings Mills, but the questions need to be posed at least, because you are the quarterback. You're not another player. This isn't Calais Campbell. This isn't Marcus Williams. This is your franchise quarterback. This is the face of the franchise. This is a former MVP of the league.
You can't be the leader of the franchise and not be there when 80% of the team's working out. We got to be careful with that, because I don't agree with that entirely. Ray Lewis skipped OTAs a ton, and I know he got criticized for that at the time, because that's just what we talk about this time of year. But it is different when you are talking about the quarterback. It is. It is. And look around the league. Again, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson's not Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers, well, are we really going to
feel comfortable comparing him with Aaron Rodgers, who had 2 years of very clear public feuding with the Packers and not being on the same page, and Kyler Murray, who we know it's about the contract. So that's where I keep coming back to this and saying it has to be about the contract then, right? So if that's the case, fine. Guys that have been tagged by the Ravens in the past, they're not there during OTAs, and they haven't signed their tender, so technically they're not under contract, so they can even skip, and hold out going into training camp. So this isn't quite like that. But if you just tell me it is about the contract, that would almost be refreshing at this point from the standpoint of, all right, it would make a little more sense. But he said so little. The team is, like I said, in my mind, they've offered some cover in this situation, and I think that's almost become detrimental now when he doesn't show up for OTAs, and the owner's talking about how obsessed he is with winning a Super Bowl. And it's not to say I don't think Lamar Jackson doesn't want to win, but again, you look at this, you look at how quarterbacks, what the expectation has been traditionally as far as that position being the exception. You can be a linebacker or a safety or an offensive tackle and skip OTAs. Quarterback's a different animal. It just is. And if people don't like that,
then if you want to get paid here, go get paid here right now. Go negotiate with Eric, make your deal, get your $231 million or whatever that is. If you feel like you have leverage, and he has leverage in that they didn't win after he left last year, they see his value. But the notion that he's pissed about the Hollywood Brown thing and that he thinks he can win a Super Bowl somewhere else, that it would be better for him to win somewhere else, and somewhere else will be the one that gives him money after giving the Ravens chattel in the form of, 3 first-round draft, whatever that would be. I just don't – I don't know who his coach is to sit and say, all right, Lamar, go to camp, not go to camp. Negotiate a new deal now, not negotiate a new deal right now. Go win a Super Bowl with these people peacefully, and then you have them and the whole world that wants to give you money, or piss them all off, show up, play hard to get, let the media speculate, let fans go nuts, become I don't want to say divisive, but certainly controversial. Be something we're talking about in June. If that's what you want, we're talking about you. If you want a contract, negotiate a contract. If you're going to play it out the way Flacco did, then say, hey, I'm happy with my $22 million. I'm going to play. I'll get my $300 million around the corner. I'll get even more when I win a championship. I'll win a Super Bowl, believe that, and let it go. And that's, if he's coached up well, when we corner him and Zrebeck and Jameson get their first questions in and they're up, like when all that happens, he better have something. I mean, he better have something. He better say something that makes it look like I want to be here and this is my place. Because if he doesn't, that will not be a good look if he comes in and looks like he doesn't want to be here and that he doesn't want a long-term contract here and he isn't playing to get a long-term contract here and he isn't playing to win a Super Bowl here. He has to reiterate all of those things again because he didn't show up and run around in gym shorts last week.
Yeah, and I mean, the longer he stays away, the longer he doesn't speak on this, the questions just grow louder. I mean, and that's just reality. I mean, we talked about his contract some last year, but it was last year, right? It was much further away from him hitting the market as he is scheduled to hit this March. Now, we know he would be tagged. We know he's not going anywhere in the short term, short of the Ravens trading him, which, I certainly don't think we're anywhere close to that point. But, it begs the question. And, for me, if it were truly about ball and it wasn't about his contract, and even if he was all about just waiting and going the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott route, to me, you show up at OTAs, you're going to get the questions. You can brush them off in the way that he's kind of brushed them off since going back to last spring. But once he's on the field and throwing to James Prochet and Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay and taking snaps from Tyler Linderbaum and throwing to Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely and going through all that, where does the focus start to shift? Back onto the field, right? Now, the contract questions will continue, periodically until there's resolution there one way or the other. But by staying away entirely, it puts all the focus back on his contract and his long-term status and his happiness and his desire to be here. And I know, he's tweeted there's been a periodic tweet or two that have addressed it on a small scale. But when you really haven't answered questions about it, when you've been asked, and every time you were asked, last May, last June, last August. I think he was asked at one point in September or October about his contract. He was asked the day after the season ended. And every single time, the focus has been on the season, or the focus has been on getting healthy, or whatever. So, again, if not now, then when? And that's what I keep coming back here. What is the end game here? What is the end? If you're asking Lamar right now, if you're sitting down having a beverage with him, and then you have the truth serum, right? Or you're just talking guy to guy, and you just say, how do you see this playing out for you in the best case scenario? And I'd be fascinated to hear that right now, because again, so much of this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and certainly doesn't jive with how the team has talked about it. And that's where I've said, maybe the team, Lamar, I know at one point made a comment on Twitter about not wanting people to read his mind, which, when you're not saying much about it, if you're one of the faces of the NFL, people are going to speculate. People are going to talk about this.
Well, this
is that
the maturity thing. I mean, I'm sitting here reading his tweet again. Can I read it out loud? Because we haven't really read it.
Sure,
Lamar,
sure. Go ahead.
These are his words. Like, this is what he had to say, right? I mean, if we had a podium and he had a chance to edit this and put commas in and have 15 threads if he wished to, have his own press conference, right? If he wished to address the world on his own terms, not with our questions, he could. Lamar wants to be Lamar Chris. This part of OTAs is voluntary, uppercase. My guy, I will be there, just not on your watch. It's probably other QBs not attending voluntary OTAs either. But since it's Lamar, it's a huge deal. Find something else to talk about. The premise that we're not interested in him, the premise that his teammates practicing and media being there and him not being there would not be a huge deal, is either farcical or naive, or I don't know what to say, but this is part of making $45 million. You think it's bad now? Go win a couple more MVPs and win a couple Super Bowls, and you'll see that people will be talking about you in all sorts of ways. I mean, it's strange. It really is strange. Oh. And for all of them, I hope they get in the room and figure this out, because it just wasn't a good look for the franchise, for the leader of the franchise. Not a good look for the Ravens, who've said we have our thing together, and our 25-year-old quarterback who is hungry to win and was injured, and we haven't won since October. I don't know. As a fan, we should be talking about this, because there is some upheaval here. It's weird.
Yeah, and I mean, to address this point, like I said, I've named the quarterbacks. We know Kyler Murray's not happy in Arizona, so that's not surprising. We've been led to believe Lamar doesn't have unhappiness here and wants to be here, so that doesn't jive. Aaron Rodgers, again, okay, if you want to compare him to Aaron Rodgers, and I get it, Rodgers just got a contract. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers, all the uncertainty there with the wide receiver position and Devontae Adams being gone, he should be there. I'd say the same thing about him. Tom Brady's, like I said, he retired earlier this offseason. He was at OTAs for years and years in New England until his wife basically said to him, you need to be home with the kids more.
Well,
Lamar's not at that
stage.
Take this
back to a union thing with the OTAs and voluntary, right? That's
quarterback is the exception here. Quarterback is the exception here. Again, if we were talking about anyone else, if you wanted to talk about this with Calais Campbell not being there, or even Marcus Williams or Michael Pierce, who free agent signings, I thought that was a little
or Von Miller.
Quarterbacks are different. And if anyone said, well, that's not fair, well, then I would say, okay, well, then they don't deserve to make such a incredibly disproportional money compared to other positions, even though they're not overpaid, because quarterback is that important. But that's why it's so important to have your quarterback there for OTAs. Again, for me, it's not even that much about that. For me, it's much more being concerned about this being the symptom of a greater problem, and that's Lamar not being on the same page with the organization. And for me, it's feeling more and more evident that they're not on the same page. To your point, it could be as simple as when he does show up, Eric and Steve, and maybe Steve Bisciotti shows up that day, and they have they sit down in Steve's office and they have a glass of wine and say, hey, let's work this out. Okay, here are the top 5 contracts in the league at quarterback. Lamar, we want to pay you in there. We're not looking to lowball you here. Let's do it. And if they did that, they could have a deal done in a matter of hours, probably a matter of a couple days, I would suppose. But when this, we keep seeing this saga play out the way it has been, and it's been so strange. And OTAs, no showing OTAs being the latest example. That's where you do question, how much does he want to be here? And the question has to be asked. You can keep tweeting or retweeting or liking tweets from the team and retweeting other players making plays, but your actions speak louder than your words.
If the priority is winning a Super Bowl and getting the biggest contract in the history of whatever, and you're stuck here and it's $22 million, if the priority is winning, you'd be out with your teammates. And that comes from the purple professional of if my tweet, which is you're either all in or you are not. And that's what any football coach would ask for, what any leader of any organization would ask for. Leadership, especially when you're making $22 million and you're the quarterback, is not optional or voluntary at your level. And best to stay off the internet and media timelines when your teammates are working to help you win a Super Bowl, which you said is the goal, right? They're out there to help you win a Super Bowl and you're not there. And that's not good. That's just not good.
Sure. I don't disagree with you on that.
We're talking about it because his teammates are talking about it, and the people in the building whose livelihood, depends on him winning a Super Bowl, and they're not going to get $250 million if he wins a Super Bowl. He is. But they want to win a Super Bowl because that's what they get up to do out there.
And that's the other element of this that, you're forcing your teammates now to answer questions about this. And that's the part of this that, Marlon Humphrey's out there and is paid among the highest cornerbacks in the league. Mark Andrews, among the highest paid tight ends in the league. And they're both out there and they're answering questions about it because you're not there. So
it's optional for them too.
Yeah. And again, it's voluntary. I get that. And if it's any other position, I'm rolling my eyes at a lot of what you're saying. If we're talking about other positions. Quarterback's a different animal. It's why they're paid so much. It's why they're the ones that win MVP every year. That's why they're the ones that are picked to be, going to Disneyland, whoever's winning the Super Bowl. Go down the list. We know it's the most important position. It's the most marketable position, all of those different things. And Lamar has done so much to prove that he deserves to be paid among the elite. But, when this happens on the heels of the organization, talking the way in the terms they have this offseason about him, it's where, again, are they on the same page? Is this a symptom of a much greater problem that, missing OTAs is a drop in the bucket compared to concerns about what it could mean in a bigger picture sense?
Well, I have no concerns about getting a great crab cake this week. We're going to be down at Luna Del C with my friend Tony Asadi down on Pratt Street before the Orioles game. We'll be there 2 to 5. Have some Betty Boop scratch-off tickets giveaway. Still got a handful of these left over from Nick's Grandstand Grill. Had great conversations at Nick's, great conversations at Black Swan last week. All of it brought to you by our friends at Window Nation. Buy 2, get 2 free. I'll be talking about it all during the month of June. I did it. You can do it as well. And our friends at Goodwill, where they still need to bring the truck because I still have a closet and now a whole table of goods to give away to our friends at Goodwill. Lots of new sponsors, lots of things happening here into June, above and beyond mini camps, and Adley Rutschman and Luke running around with the Orioles here this week, the upstart Orioles, these of the 400 range instead of the 300 range. We're going to have some fun around here as we get ready for World Cup announcements as well on the 16th of the month. I will have something very special planned on the 17th for the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery, Goodwill, and our friends at Window Nation. Luke can be found at Baltimore Luke out on the Instagram, the Twitter, and anywhere Lamar Jackson is practicing as we head the mandatory week coming up. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore, positive.